Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tom's Watchbar. I'm Ron Lighthall with the Storm Report. Of course, I'm next to Terry Spain. Terry, here we are again. Week 1 is behind us, but we're right back here again for this great game as Orlando gets ready to host the Louisville Kings.
Yeah, I think, we're probably good luck, too, because the last time we came here, they won. So we're going to try to repeat that, and hopefully they'll be able to pull out the victory again and be 2-0.
We're 1-0 ourselves, man. Some interesting things. Last night's game. Let's talk about last night's game because Orlando hosted the Columbus Aviators, and they played last night. They had that prime time Friday night slot where they hosted in Columbus the DC Defenders, and not what I was expecting from Columbus. I mean, I really thought they were a tougher team last week.
Yeah, but and you got to realize too, one of the things that you didn't mention is that the DC Defenders are actually the champions. And they played like it yesterday. The first week that they played, they didn't win that game, and they took offense to that. I know Coach Shannon definitely challenged his team, and it showed last night, and they clearly looked like the better team last night.
The one thing I was proud of for the UFL and is the turnout, man. They had up over 14,000 in that stadium. They had to open another section. So Columbus, if they can get a couple of victories, I think they're going to have a real solid product there, and the fans were certainly behind them early on in the game.
Yeah, winning solves everything, and that's going to be the same thing for any team. I think the only team that really didn't have too much of an attendance issue with the Battlehawks. They have been all on it the entire time that they've came into existence. So all these teams are kind of mimicking or trying to mimic what the Battlehawks are doing. But the thing about it is you got to win, and winning solves a lot of things.
Full slate of games. We have Orlando's game tonight, and, of course, tomorrow Birmingham and Houston play. Houston did not look good in week 1. I'm anxious to see that game. And then you have two high-powered offenses playing Tuesday night. Man, they got that Tuesday night lockdown right there. Not a lot going on Tuesday night, but the Battlehawks are at the Dallas Renegades. And Dallas, I mean, they blew up the scoreboard offensively, and St. Louis, did the same thing. And I'm anxious to see that game because that's going to be a battle of supremacy in this league right now. Yeah,
and that's actually going to be a really good time too, because a lot of people, you're right, they don't watch too much sports on Tuesdays. March Madness will be behind us, and that will give. I would expect to see the attendance of watching that game is sky high because there are two great teams, and a lot of people, they have a great fan base, and a lot of people want to watch them play.
So let's talk about the game we're hosting here in Orlando. The Louisville Kings come in. They're 0-1, but they played tough, man. They came off that game. They just a few points separated them, and they played real well. And let's talk about how different these teams are, because you can't ask for two different statistical teams.
Yeah, they're very different. One has a seasoned coach. Coach Beck has been coaching for quite some time, and he knows what to expect. He coached for the Battlehawks for numerous of years. And then you also have a newer coach that's coming in, but he was a quarterback at one time too.
Yeah, Chris Redmond, yes, sir.
Yeah. So, but you're right. They're two different styles of team, but we talk about balance, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that's going to decide this game tonight.
One of the important things tonight is they have to establish this game. This is almost like only second game, but it's a must-win for Orlando because they turn around. They're on the road in Louisville again next week, so they're playing back-to-back the Louisville Kings, home and away. But so the two different dynamics in the offense, Orlando looked real polished. They looked like they had the game plan. There were some unexpected things that favored them, with the initial kickoff.
Yeah.
They kicked off. There was an instant fumble. Orlando, 3 plays later, was in the end zone. Not something they game planned for, but they certainly, rose to that challenge. But Jack Plummer was dead on last week. And if it wasn't for just a few boneheaded plays, and there was some setbacks penalty-wise.
Yeah.
But they played a real structured game, whereas Louisville comes in, and the only way to describe them is pure chaos.
You're right. But that goes to show you about the balance and the coaching. That shows a lot. The running game, even though there wasn't a lot of yards that have been ran by Orlando, but there were 2 touchdowns that came out of that. And but you're right, Plummer, he looked, magnificent, and he wanted to actually set the trend because it was a quarterback battle between him and DTR. And he wanted to show show the coach that he made the right decision by choosing him to be the starter. And I know a lot of it fed off of the hype of the crowd. That crowd was hype.
Oh, they were electric on a Sunday night.
It's contagious. You know, the special teams were pretty good. And you said that you don't usually equate, for turnovers, but they hang their hat on that. They really want to create those turnovers and create points after that, and that's exactly what they did.
So the traditional versus the unconventional, Orlando does stay within that traditional kind of planned attack, and the entire offense revolves around James Bean there with Louisville Kings, and he is a guy who can take a broken play and turn it into a highlight reel, and that's something Orlando can't really plan for, because when it comes to defensive penetration, they can't over-penetrate, because if they get guys behind him, Bean's going to take 8, 10, 12 yards on you.
Yeah, and you gotta account for that, and I think he's going to try to do a lot. They're going to play a little bit more desperate than Orlando, even though this is a home game for Orlando, because they don't want to go down 0-2. But Orlando doesn't want to go 1-1, so it's going to be a good game. But I know they're going to come out a little bit more hungry, because, believe it or not, Louisville's defense is spot on. They have a really good defense.
They are, but they, here the questions here, in the segment is. The big question is, can Louisville finish? And that was one of the things last week, that Louisville came in and they were a little anemic there in the fourth quarter, and that's when things got out of hand for them was late in the game, and they have to get that under control. But when you don't plan for that, and your game is got that chaotic,
right,
kind of game plan, and you're playing along that, you're building on the positives. This week right now, though, Orlando has to win to prove that last week one wasn't a fluke, and if they can establish that 2-0, they're telling the league, hey, we're in this.
Yeah, and especially because they're one of the newer franchises. A lot of folks write newer franchises off, because the DC Defenders, they've been around for a while. They've been the returning champions, but they definitely don't want the league to think, okay, this is a fluke team. They had a lot of hype coming into this. But if they come in and stick to what they need to do, run the ball. But I also, and don't be surprised to see Coach Beck with a few trick plays this game, because a lot of people are not expecting it. And Louisville's defense is an aggressive defense. So you hit them with the quick slants, and then you also hit them with those double moves. And I think that's going to really help Orlando, because they have a very aggressive defense.
I'm going to let you go ahead. We take a lot of notes, man. We go back through the film and look at everything. I'm going to let you talk about Orlando's keys to the games that, you and I kind of bounce back and forth, and I kind of did the Louisville keys, because, you can only focus on one of the two teams. But tell me what you think of tonight's keys are for Orlando to hang another W.
Well, one, they definitely have to protect the quarterback, the line of scrimmage. The line of scrimmage looked a little shaky, and I understand that it was the first game of the season, but you want to work on that. You want to polish those up, because Louisville's going to bring the heat, and they're going to try to make Plummer a running quarterback, and you don't want that. And so you have to definitely protect the line of scrimmage. You also have to keep Plummer clean, like we talked about before. He has to get clean. And then, you want to win the time of possession. If you win the time of possession, and you're up, then that only helps you out, because now you're up 7-0 and you had the ball for 15, 20 minutes. The other team is sitting on the sideline waiting for you to do whatever you need to do. So you win that time of possession. I think that will definitely help out. And then limit his line of scrimmage, his scrambling. You mentioned before that if he gets out of the pocket and he goes and get away, that can be a long night for the Storm, and you definitely don't want that.
So I worked on Louisville's keys, and you touched on it a little bit, man. That time of possession is going to be critical, because if you can keep the ball out of the hands of Bean, that's less chances for him to be able to scramble like that. But Louisville's keys to winning is they have to pressure Plummer early. That goes with you. With your analysis that they have to protect Plummer.
Of course.
And, of course, Louisville, they have to get to him early and often. They got to rattle his cage a little bit. And the other thing is they've got to implement a running back. They've got to have somebody out of that backfield. Right now it is just all, the Bean show. It is just, it was his and the RPO. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to have that O open up for that offense. You have to get a running back in there. You have to get that option play to take away the focus, because right now, you got 4 down in most cases across the line. All 4 of those guys know Bean is that target that they need to go after.
Yeah, most definitely.
And the other thing is the Louisville has to focus on being able to finish what they started. They can't have late game penalties. They can't get lethargic. They can't let things, they can get a little shaky wheel, but they got to get it back under control. And that's something last week that happened, particularly in the red zone. They've got to get those red zone scores if they have any chance to beat Orlando.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. And no one, I know Louisville in particular, don't want to be 0-2 in this league, because you don't have as many games, and you're going to have to win as many games as possible. And they're going to have to try to win tonight. But Orlando Storm, that crowd and the environment, the coaching, the talent, and the level of play, I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised to see some trick plays tonight.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Orlando's offense a little bit. Another key factor, a Brevard kid there, Jay-Sean Corbin, led the league last week, 66 yards. Not a huge amount of yards, but it was league leading for, the UFL. And he was explosive. Orlando, they create holes. He sees the holes. He exploits the holes. And he is going to be a huge factor in tonight's game and moving forward.
Yeah, and Louisville knows that. So what they're going to do is probably send another extra man in the box and going to try to contain the run. So you got to look at all those wide receivers those really good wide receivers that the Storm has. You're going to have to utilize them tonight. But one of the things that I wanted to mention, and you mentioned it a little bit before, Jay-Sean not only led the league last week, he led the league the entire year last year.
He did.
And so he has a lot of abilities to make people miss, and he's kind of elusive running back. He's not going to kill you with the dynamic speed, but he's elusive, and that's what's going to be needed tonight, because, like I mentioned before, and I keep harping on, I watched Louisville play last week, and they should have won that game, and they know that, and they're going to definitely come and bring a lot of pressure to the quarterback tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We want to thank our sponsors. We've got Blingy out here, man. I tell you, he has become a celebrity in his own right. We have people asking, how they can get their picture taken. It's not going to be long where we're going to be driving him around and taking him to birthday parties and special appearances. Because it's beautiful, and the reaction we're getting from people is fantastic.
Yeah, most definitely.
Tiana, again, she really created a monster
of course.
here,
Of course.
And we want to thank Zoa Energy Drink and Junkless. We want to thank Toyota of Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
We want to thank Robin Fisher with State Farm Insurance over there in Titusville. They just hosted a great rocket launch.
They sure did.
I mean, Titusville was the center of the American universe. It was like every eye in the world seemed like it was on.
A few 100,000 folks were in Titusville.
Yeah, it was packed, and if you stayed home, smart move.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I had the opportunity to see that. I went to Kennedy Space Center, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to actually see that. Absolutely amazing and breathtaking.
And it's funny because while you were out there, you took a call from Coach
Beck,
and said, "Hey, I'm out here for a rocket launch. So you got to balance a little bit. You got a lot going on." We also want to thank everybody at Brevard Sports Network. We want to thank your guys there at Sports First Media.
Yeah.
You know what you do. So
Tom's Watchbar, who's hosting us.
That's what I'm going to close out. But we want to thank Tom's Watchbar. If you haven't been out here, this is crazy cool.
Yeah.
2 stories, high atop parking garage, overlooking Orlando. They've got a 1,000,001 TVs, from every vantage point.
Yeah.
I think every game going on around the globe is somewhere on the screen right now. From we look over, we can see golf. We got basketball. We got all the highlight reels.
Yeah.
All the various sports. Got soccer.
Yeah.
And tonight, of course, they'll have the Orlando Storm game, which is going to be on ESPN. So, Tara, give me your final thoughts. I know we touched on a lot of stuff, but give me your final thoughts and what you see moving forward and how critical this is going to be for the future of this season.
Yeah, my final thoughts are we have a veteran coach in Coach Beck, and I think that he's going to be that glue that's going to drive this team to the playoffs. I'm calling it already early, and I believe that the Storm, barring any injuries, they're going to have a unique opportunity to place themselves in the playoffs. And then they have the coaches, they have the players, and they have this great fan base that's out here. So all they need is for you to come out and scream to the top of your lungs and come support this Orlando Storms team.
I couldn't agree more. Again, I'm Ron Lighthall. Terry Spain, we are the Storm Report, and we want to thank you, the viewers and the listeners. Make sure you check us out, follow us, and share us. And big shout out to Manny again. Manny with that critical footage last week, man, right in the thick of things. So we'll see a lot more from him. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again probably early next week as we analyze tonight's game. And again, thank you for joining us.
And one thing I want to say before we end, happy birthday to the United States Navy Chiefs.
Fantastic.